Hey there guys, Dirty H here and welcome back to New Zealand. In episode 13 we build something really cool and unique from Wellington, the Basin Reserve, which is a really famous cricket ground, and I guess its most unique feature is that it's right in the middle of this squarish roundabout, which is very unique, and I thought it'd be perfect to add to the city. I couldn't find the Basin Reserve on the Steam Workshop, so everything that you can see here is made by hand with various props and assets, and we'll go through all of that very shortly. So you guys might have noticed a change with the intro. I hope you enjoyed that. I've changed it just a little wee bit. I didn't want to tweak it too much. And I've also added timestamps into this episode and will continue to do so in future episodes so that you guys can jump right to your favourite part and past your maybe not so favourite part. So anyway, I start here with the square roundabout. And I've chosen to put it sort of on the edge of downtown here somewhat, and it just happens to be a very steep incline where I want to put it, so I've got to flatten all of that out obviously, and it's created quite steep hills surrounding it, which is perfect really because the real Basin Reserve has residential houses surrounding it in the hills overlooking it, and yeah, I guess this follows suit perfectly, and I do the same. It would be silly not to, so I put a whole lot of residential houses and blocks in the surrounding hills, and it makes for some great sweeping cinematic shots too. You actually may have noticed one in the intro if you had a keen eye. So I don't want to make these intersections too complicated or anything silly like that, and unfortunately I didn't have time in this episode to detail and mark out the intersections, so I'm gonna have to do that in the next episode probably. But it's fair to say we get so much done in this episode. We fill out a massive portion of the city and the map, and there's some really cool sweeping before and after shots coming up later in the episode, so I hope you guys really like those as well. So I'm using Wellington as inspiration again here, obviously with the Basin Reserve, and I actually didn't mean to lean on one city so heavily when I set out to create this series. It's just that Wellington is such a well set out and beautiful city with a whole lot of really unique attractions. It's just happened to be the city that I'm really probably basing most of this off, to be honest. And I'm not sure if you guys have caught any of $2.20's new series, now called Oceania. And he's also mentioned a few times that he is going to be basing a lot of his city off Wellington as well, which is really exciting for me. I can't wait to see what he builds. I'm sure you guys have caught that series. If you haven't, you need to go and see it. He's only built the map so far, but his attention to detail is pretty mind-blowing. And yeah, it's a really great map that he's pumped out so far, so I can't wait to see the rest. So like I mentioned earlier, I couldn't find any Basin Reserve asset on the Steam Workshop whatsoever, so I've had to make my own here, and I start with the grandstand, and I'm using Citywalk City Walls networks, and these are really great. He's got great textures on them, they're really easy to use. Unfortunately it is difficult to place props around them once they've been used. If you've used these you'll know what I mean, and I knew that going into this, but they just look too good not to use for these bleachers. And these are built on a natural hillside, which I put in here as well. And this makes up a lot of the seating inside the Basin Reserve. It's basically just a grass bank, which is really cool. And because I didn't really have too much room to work with between the bleachers I'd created and the roundabout road, I've had to use the Terra networks here to raise the terrain up and control it a little bit more closely. And I finished this off by putting some bushes and some grass on the roadside and a fence around the top. The Basin Reserve has these pinkish red aisles, and I'm picking so that you can spot them easy when you're in the crowd, but I'm installing those as well. And I also want to install some supporter signs around the edge of the field, and of course we need to have some beautifully cut and well maintained grass. It took me a long time to find the right decal to use for the pitch, and I've ended up using the NAR gravel, and this is the 24x8 size, and it's not perfect but it looks pretty close really, and I've doubled it up in some places to make it look like the pitch that's being used. And if you know your cricket, you know there's more than one pitch out in the middle, so yeah, I've included 3 pitches here and put some decals down for the stumps as well, but yeah, unfortunately couldn't find any stumps. But aside from that, I'm so pleased with this. It looks really good. I think the whole area at this point is starting to come together just nicely. And I think the most iconic part of the Basin Reserve, apart from the road around it, is the shape of this grandstand here with this 45-degree pitch, almost church-like roof. So I've set about trying to create this as well, which was a bit of a task, and I decided to build it away from the Basin Reserve that we've built so far, just so that I can get a better view on it, and networks that we've placed down for the bleachers aren't getting in the way of what we're building. And what you're seeing me build right now, the roof, was by far the most challenging part of building this grandstand. It was a nightmare, to be honest with you. This is a sped up version, but I used PO, and the angles, to get this right were, like I said, pretty nightmarish, but we got there in the end, and I'm super stoked with how this looks. I used a container and squeezed it down with PO, if you're wondering, to get the texture on the roof, and aside from it saying ocean box on the side of it, I'm really happy with it. So now that I've finished the main stadium, Basin Reserve, I can start working on the areas between the road and the edge of the reserve. And this first bit I'm working on here is basically just access up into the top of the grandstand and to an area where I assume you'd buy tickets. And I also put down a public toilet at the entrance here next to the road, and the rest of it's just a open sort of a courtyard. The next asset that you see me place down is a new building from Targs, and I'm pretty sure it's called the New Zealand Alexander Library, and it's a really beautiful building, and in this instance I'm using it as sort of a cricket museum, which there is a cricket museum at the real Basin Reserve. It is quite a lot different from this one, but this building for me fits perfectly for that sort of thing and goes well with this city. The last piece to fill in is the back of the main grandstand, and here it's mainly just a drop-off area for industrial goods, or maybe this is where some of the athletes get dropped off and come through a back entrance here, but I'd imagine there'd be a fair bit of catering and stuff like that going on match days as well, and this would be the area where those goods are dropped off.
commercial vehicle function.
In order to expand this suburban area up the hillside here, I've had to rob trees from the outskirts of the map again, unfortunately. And what I've done is it was a comment from Stiga that's made me do this actually, but I've gotten rid of a lot of trees and put farmland in instead. And you might even notice that I've added like a brown tone to some of the hills and stripped all of the trees off them to make it look like maybe they receive a lot of snow during winter and the foliage doesn't really get a chance to grow type of thing. And this has also helped my computer breathe a nice sigh of relief and allowed me to make the city a little bit bigger, because I am running into issues. I've had it crash on me a couple of times recently, which is a little bit scary. So yeah, unfortunately at this stage I've had to rob some trees, and I may even have to upgrade my computer, so we'll see how we go. The types of cinematic shots that I like to take include a lot of distance shots with trees in the background, and loading trees that far away is just killing my computer. So anyway, what you can see me doing here is basically just filling out the edge of the downtown area and transitioning it to a lower commercial style right around the basin area. Pay no attention to the water on the roads, by the way. I was having issues with the water, but it's all sorted now. And yeah, you will see this transition from downtown to low commercial and then eventually up into the suburbs, and I run right through how I do that very shortly. And just quickly, you may have also noticed the beehive. This is a famous parliament building in Wellington, and it's just been released on the workshop by Ali Targs, and it's just magnificent. It looks so cool. You've probably seen it already in the cinematics, but there's some more coming up later on as well. So here's a shot of our bare bones suburb roads with the low commercial transitioning up the hill, and I've tried to keep the low commercial just to the main roads, and all of the space you see in between around here will be filled with residential homes. I guess the biggest challenge with this area was the steep incline from the Basin Reserve elevation up to the highest point. It really is quite challenging working with heights, and if you've played City Skylines and tried to do that, it is very, very challenging. It's much easier to make a flat city, but easy isn't really my style whatsoever, and it looks much more realistic when there's hills and the properties go up and over the hills, and all of that sort of carry on. It sort of goes without saying really, but when we look objectively at cities, and especially New Zealand cities, very, very few are completely flat. There's only maybe one or two that I can think of, so I think the hills are very appropriate as well. I think, like I said, the worst thing is they just take a long time to detail properly, and around the houses I've really just stuck to trees and stuff like that, and I've put the odd retaining wall in, but the closer we get to downtown, the more I've tried to think of different and unique ways to cover the terrain differences, and I've also tried not to get too carried away because, like I said, my computer's already bombing out and I don't want to drive it crazy. But yeah, I have to find that nice balance between making those transitions look realistic and not turning my computer into a potato. In this area here, I really wanted to add in a lot of high-rise residential buildings, and in particular older style ones, and I found some good ones on the workshop. A lot of these are from Smiles, I think is the name, and some of them are even vanilla ones. And I also spent a lot of time detailing this area, especially the terrain height differences. Woo, yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed episode 13. As you can see, we got heaps built and it's looking really cool. Massive thank you to my regular viewers, and if you're new, welcome. If you don't subscribe, you should consider doing that. And to my subscribers, thank you very much. Your continued support is what drives me to make these videos. So have a really good weekend, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.